Returning for a third visit is Roger Savory. Roger is an ecologist who is focused on turning deserts into grasslands. He's director of Savory Holistics, which utilizes livestock to restore ecological function. Today, we're going to talk about soil. Roger, how's it going today?
Hart, it's going well.
Glad to hear it. Roger, the American West is in the process of desertification and is experiencing deep drought as well as record flooding. Do you have a solution to this problem?
So, Hart, it's not about me. It's we collectively as humans. Do we have a solution? And yes, we do. Anytime you analyze the root cause of a problem and find out what the root cause is, then you can develop solutions. However, it never pays to address the symptoms. Now, the symptom of a drought is it's bare and dry and hot, and there's been no rain. The symptom of a flood is the actual flood. It's washing out things. It's too late to react to either the drought or the flood. We have to address the root cause. Now, funnily enough, the root cause is right here between our ears, and the root cause is how we as humans are collectively making decisions. We keep trying to simplify things, get things to be linear, and that is the root cause of both droughts and floods.
Does healthy soil do a better job of absorbing rainfall? How does that work?
So, absolutely. So, but firstly, what is a definition of healthy soil? So a lot of people don't understand the difference between sand and soil. So if we look at sand, it has no life in it. If we look at soil, it is a living organism, and it's an extremely complex living organism. Depending on which data you look at, it's literally trillions of microorganisms per shovel load. Now, if you say trillions, humans, we cannot even wrap our heads around numbers so high. So, the skin of the planet should be soil, and the skin of the planet is an entire living organism. So then we say, okay, well, what's a healthy soil? Well, the more life in a soil, the more life forms in a soil, the more fertility it has and the healthier it is. So what we find is when a soil is full of life and very healthy, it has a lot of carbon. Now, carbon molecules store and hold a lot of water. But more importantly, a living soil has molehills, gopher holes, earthworm holes, dung beetle holes. And all of these holes become air and water exchanges between deep underground and the soil surface. So, for example, there's a dung beetle in Africa, the big scarab rhino dung beetle. Where it makes a dung ball about 2 inches in diameter, and then it rolls a further 2-inch clay protective coating around it. So all in, you have something about 4 inches that the dung beetle then buries that. But they don't bury it lightly. They bury it 10 meters or 30 feet deep. So now you have a 30-meter deep 4-inch channel that water in the monsoons can go down. Now, with my herd of cattle in Africa, 2,000 cattle kept tightly bunched together, literally within 30 minutes of the herd leaving the paddock and going to a new paddock, you could not find a piece of dung still left on the soil surface. That meant that 2,000 cattle's dung was carried underground by those dung beetles. And by the way, there was a swarm of dung beetles that followed the herd. Well, how far apart were those 4-inch channels going 10 yards deep? When people talk about, oh, it's an unprecedented, it's a cyclone, it's a hurricane, Oh, we got 4 inches of rain in 24 hours. Big deal. Big deal if you have the dung beetle channels.
Mm-hmm.
Big deal if you have the earthworm channels. Big deal if you have the ground squirrel channels. Big deal if you have the mole channels. However, if you don't have all that life in your soil, because life is a living organism that's extremely complex, the water can't penetrate, can't get in.
Right.
So yeah, what is a healthy soil? A healthy soil is a living organism that it goes from the most tiny of organisms, single cell organisms, up to what? Bears dig dens, aardvarks dig dens, what are the things in Texas? Armadillos dig holes. So those are all life forms that are part of the soil whole ecosystem, and we mustn't overlook them. We've tried to simplify soil to N, P, and K. We've tried to simplify soil in the 1950s to a chemical. Soil is not a chemical.
Mm-hmm.
Soil is a living organism. Sand is a chemical. So currently, most farming in America is hydroponic farming, and they literally use the sand as a support mechanism to hold up the plants. Then the dripper lines bring just nutrients, N, P, and K, and whatever micro elements to feed the plants, but it's hydroponic farming in sand. Now, in the old days, we used to farm in soil. However, I will put a proviso. I do not respect any agriculture, because I understand that all agriculture is what we had to invent after we had destroyed the functioning ecosystems that had millions of grazing animals on them, whether it was the saiga in the steppes, whether it was the bison in America, whether it was the wildebeest and buffalo in Africa. All the brittle environments of the planet had truly massive herds of animals till humans killed them. Once that food source was gone, then 10 to 12,000 years ago, we had to invent agriculture to continue to feed us. But we developed our civilizations based on those massive numbers of animals, but we foolishly slaughtered them to extinctions. And then because we're an omnivore, we had to change food sources because we had removed our proteins and our living animals that were keeping soils healthy in brittle environments.
Right.
Now, a healthy soil in a forest and non-brittle environment is very different. Mm-hmm. It's got different acidic levels, and it's based on fungi and insects cycling carbon and breaking things down. So we've got 2 very different types of healthy soils on the planet based on the amount of the year that has atmospheric moisture. And they are 180 degrees opposite to each other, and we need to know that, recognize it, and manage differently for it.
Mm-hmm. I get excited when you talk about animals. I call them animal engineers. The earthworms, the dung beetles, the prairie dogs, beavers, cattle. They're all in their own way animal engineers, and they do many things biologically. But one of the things they do, like you said, is that they dig holes, and those holes capture rainfall when it does rain. But we have in the West, it's my understanding that many states have laws that a landowner is obligated to eradicate the prairie dogs. And they have businesses that go around in eradicating prairie dogs. So it seems very short-sighted to me.
No, look, everything we do in our modern human management is kill, 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 and kill. It is the only thing we understand. We want to try and simplify everything because our linear brains work in one line. So if there's complexity, we can't grapple with it. So the solution is get rid of it.
And you can always sell a solution to kill something. You can always, hey, I'm going to come to I'm going to kill something. Services and products are based on killing something, but so the economics is in favor of killing things. But anyway, but I digress.
Well,
go ahead.
You are digressing, but you brought up something. What economics do we have when we live in the Sahara?
There's no economy because there's no ecosystem to support it.
Correct. So the only truly sustainable ecosystem on the planet is a solar-based ecosystem based on photosynthesis.
Right. Yeah. And you have to have the ecosystem, which has the plants, which does the photosynthesis, which gives life to the soil and the animals. So let me go to the next question. We are often told that grazing animals are bad for soil, but you say they can be good for soil. Is that right?
I wouldn't even say that's right. It's beyond right. I mean, in the brittle environments, if you have no grazing animals, you have no soil. In the brittle environments, if you have no grazing animals, you have no soil, you will desertify back to sand. All the carbon that was in the soil, that was developed there in the soil over millions of years of grazing animals, creating and maintaining grassland ecosystems and desert, grassland ecosystems will disappear. The grazing animal is the only, and I'll say it again, the grazing animal is the only source of carbon cycling during the long, hot, dry period. So the carbon has to be cycled by microorganisms to be part of the life cycle. The only place where you find that's warm, wet, and dark, 3 months, 4 months into a hot, dry season with no rain, is in the intestine of a ruminant. So without the intestine of a ruminant, a grazing animal, we cannot maintain our ecosystems in areas that have 1 to 11 months of dry season, depending on where you are in the world.
And some people say that those services can be provided by wild animals. And we're saying that domestic livestock is necessary because you can bunch it together to mimic the impact that wild mammals used to have when they were more numerous.
Yeah, and it's just as simple as that. I mean, we literally had millions of mammoths in America. Millions.
I didn't know that.
So where are our mammoths in America? I mean, in Africa, we've still got the African elephant. Where's the elephant in America? Well,
those animals came like storming through, and they would eat trees. They would kind of lay waste to the place, but then it would have a chance to recover.
Correct. So the mammoths are gone. The giant bison are gone. The regular little runty bison are gone. This is all humans that removed them. The kill sites in New Mexico at the base of cliffs, show it. And this isn't millions of years ago. This is just tens of thousands of years ago.
Right.
So we humans, doesn't matter what our race, what our tribe, what our species, we humans and Neanderthals have been eliminating all life for as far as we can see our records going back.
That's what we do.
Yep. And this has been an extremely successful strategy, and it's about to end. This time it's going to have cataclysmic consequences. So we've got to very quickly reboot and reprogram all 8 billion humans on the planet to a mindset of abundance and creating abundance and encouraging all life. And we've just got to stop our nonsense of kill, kill, kill. I don't know how we do it. I truly don't. I study it all the time, trying to see a way forward. I don't know how to do it, but I'm not going to stop trying.
Absolutely. So my next question is, does overgrazing degrade the quality of the soil? And what is overgrazing? Is there such a thing as just the right amount of grazing?
So there was a scientist in the 1950s, a French scientist by the name of André Voisin,
Mhm.
And he wrote a book called Grassland Productivity. And in it, he made a world-changing discovery. And the world-changing discovery was overgrazing is a factor of time, not of animal numbers or animal species. Despite the fact that 70 years have gone since that mind-blowing discovery was made, there is not a single university in America that teaches this scientific principle.
What are they teaching?
Overgrazing, too many animals.
Mhm.
No, mathematically, it's a factor of time. So, and it's to do with the recovery period. Every grass plant on the planet has to, now please listen carefully, has to be grazed at least once a year or the grass plant dies.
Mhm. Mhm.
Because not a single grass on the planet can drop its leaves at the end of the growing season.
Mhm.
So they have to be grazed. If they are not grazed, they die. What overgrazing is they are grazed too frequently
Mhm.
and they fail to recover in between grazings. Now, here is the real kick in the pants. Overgrazing might kill a few thousand grass plants a year. Over-resting grass will
Mhm.
kill billions of grass plants a year. So the far more damaging thing for our American West and Southwest is we have over-rested the range because we killed all the mammoths, all the giant bison, and all the bison. So the issue in America is not overgrazing in any way, shape, or form.
Mhm.
Please listen carefully.
Mhm.
Nowhere that I have traveled in America was overgrazing the weak link that was going to destroy our country. Everywhere, from Texas to California, the issue is over-resting our rangelands and our grasslands, not overgrazing. So overrest is the cancer that is killing our range. Factor of time.
Got it. Next question. What does healthy soil look like and feel like, and what are we going for?
Well, it's quite funny because we all pray at the feet of the God of technology, as I've said before, and a healthy soil, the best sensor we have for judging a healthy soil is our nostrils.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So when you sniff it, our nostrils can actually sense the smell. And it's so funny. I've taken people straight out of a city, handed them healthy soil and had them sniff it. And they're like, oh my God, that smells so wonderful. Now, this is a person who's in a city, who's lived in concrete, who's never smelt it, but they take one sniff and they instantly know it's good soil. So that shows how this programming goes back in our collective brains millions of years. What is a healthy soil? It's a soil so full of life that that smell that we smell, and we smell it after the rains and stuff, it's actually chemicals given off by the fungi. So all healthy soils that I've seen have fungi, bacteria, and all the worms and everything. But the easiest way for someone to compare on their own property, like if I'm working with a crop farmer, I'll say, where on the ranch do you have a couple of trees in a fenced off area that no one goes to? And we'll go there, we'll dig up the soil there, and then we'll walk out into the middle of the crop field and say, okay, we know your property used to have soil like this. Now compare it with your fields. And it'll be a black soil full of, the aggregate in the soil will be there. It'll be crumbly. It'll have a crumbly nature. And I'm talking 8 months into a dry season, it'll still be like that. And we'll go into the crop field and it'll be hard, like concrete. There'll be no spacing in between the sand molecules. There'll be no smell. So that's a simple, easy test I have people do. Go to the piece of land between the road and the fence. where they haven't done anything, or and where it was mechanically maintained. The mowing was done, once a year. The roads department comes and mows it to keep the grassland alive. Those are the best kind of simple tests that people can do to check the health of the soil. But to calibrate, just smell it. It's and we have other tests, where we use silver nitrate testing to see how complex the life forms are. But remember, we're talking about trillions of microorganisms. So what is a healthy soil? A healthy soil, and how we tell, is how much life do we see it? Do we see pill bugs? Do we see earthworms? Do we see, is it living? Is it crawling? Is it, a healthy soil is crawling. It's an active, vibrant ecosystem. And it's extremely rare on our planet today. Almost extinct.
Next question. What do you look for when you're trying to diagnose the health of the soil? So skip that. We just answered that. What are some of the practices in American agriculture and land management that have served to degrade the soil? Where do you start?
Where do you start? Okay, so and let's not just blame America, but I'll connect the dots. About between 10 and 12,000 years ago, humans invented the plow. That was it. Now, the reason that was it is the microorganisms that live in the top millimeter of soil only live there. The microorganisms that live in the second millimeter of soil only live there and keep on going down through the soil profile. Now we bring a plow, a moldboard plow, picked the soil up from down below, brought it up to the top and dumped it on the top. It twisted it over, made a lovely growing medium. But what it did was it killed all of those. What is the number for beyond a trillion? Because I mean, if it's a trillion in a shovel load or a teaspoon, a whole field, how much life did we kill? The numbers are I mean, it's more than the stars in the galaxy. It's ridiculous. So the plow killed massive amounts of life in the soil. By killing that life in the soil, all that life then released the nitrogen in its cells. That release of nitrogen made our crops grow nice and dark green, and we said, ooh, this is good. Look what good crops we grow. So we had three on average. Slash and burn agriculture generally gave us 3 years of crop production. So we had 3 years of crop production before the soil was fully dead and we couldn't grow anything anymore. So in a 3-year cycle, we went from prairies, black soils, living soils, full of life. We plowed it up. 3 years later, we moved on. It's how the West was conquered. We just kept moving west as we killed our soils. Then by the 1930s, which was extremely quickly, if you look at when America was settled, by the 1930s, we had the Dust Bowl. We had destroyed the Mississippi Delta. We had destroyed all of those states. And it was just the Dust Bowl. Nothing could grow. The sand was exposed. The wind picked up the sand, was blowing it into the cities, and everyone went, whoa, what's going on? That's what's going on. We invented the plow. We first had it pulled by an ox or a horse. Then we invented the steam engine, the steam tractor. Now we could really plow at a high rate of knots, and that really kicked it into overdrive. And then we invented the petrochemical tractor, run on diesel. Now we could just do millions of acres. I think 800 million acres is what we currently plow up. That is what killed our soil, because soil is this living organism. We turned it over and we killed it. Then, to add insult to injury, we decided after World War II, we've got all these chemicals, so let's spray chemicals. So we had insecticides to kill insects. Fascinating data shows that the same amount of crops are lost today to insect damage as were lost in the 1950s. 7% lost then, 7% lost today. And yet we still spray trillions, we're killing the insects. Now, by the way, what do birds eat? Oh, insects. So now, we've got all these birds that are endangered all around the world. We've even got birds migrating between the Amazon and Canada. There's a swift that migrates. It's going extinct because there's so much spraying in South America now. Can you believe the Amazon is running out of insects?
Yeah.
It's just, so we have to stop the plowing. We have to stop insecticides. They are useless. If we lost 7% with natural farming methods in the 50s and we're still losing 7%, well, clearly it's not working. So get rid of it, because we know the negative it's having. So the insecticides have to go. How about the fungicides? Every organism is full of fungi. Without fungi, we have no soil. Without, we have no life in the soil. So we've got to get rid of the fungicides. And how you get rid of the fungicides is if there's a fungi that's doing damage, guess what? There's another fungi that will attack that fungi. So we need to get rid of the chemical fungicides and learn how to work with nature, not against nature, and use fungi on fungi. And then, so that's the insects, that's the fungicides, and then we've got the herbicides. Oh my God! I mean, the herbicides. What are we doing? The things that should be harvesting sunlight energy and pumping it into the soil,
right,
to feed the soil microorganisms the sugars they need, we're killing. So we limit it down to a monoculture, let's say corn, and everything that else, all the 200,000 species that should be growing amongst the corn. Oh, we kill all of that. So now there's nothing to pump energy in, because remember, to have a healthy soil, I said it's the amount of life in it. What does all life require? All life requires energy. What is the source of energy under the soil surface? Sunlight. How does the sunlight shine under the soil? Well, it can't. So there's this brilliant mechanism called photosynthesis. We harvest the sunlight, and then the plants pump it underground, and they trade it with the bacteria and the fungi for sugars. That is the source of energy for life. Right. So to have a healthy soil, we've got to have more life in the soil. Life requires energy to live. The source of the energy we kill with a herbicide. Right. It is the most asinine, stupid idea humans have ever come up with. And yet it's a $95 billion industry in America. Are you kidding me? We're paying ourselves and we're subsidizing ourselves to kill ourselves.
Yeah. It's taxpayers ludicrous. Pay for this.
Yeah, it's ludicrous. So what have I done? Insecticide, herbicide, fungicide. How about the regular old pesticides? There are other pesticides. Kill the birds, kill the. It just goes on and on and on. Rodenticides. We kill the rodents. Oh, what aerated the soil? What what made it so the water could percolate? Oh, we'll kill them. Our entire philosophy is kill, kill, kill. So we cannot expect a different outcome unless we change how we think.
Right. It's like you said, the problem is here.
Yeah, and the problem is there with a huge number of really clever people who, whether consciously or subconsciously, are destroying our nation and destroying civilization.
We have the best and the brightest working in labs and in agronomy, et cetera, with this type of philosophy. What are we going to kill today?
Precisely, and taught by all our major land grant universities. It's a mass psychosis. I don't understand it.
Another question, let's see if we've answered this yet. Does healthy soil make plants healthier, and how does that work?
Yes, is the short answer. The book to read, if you want to understand it, was Soils and Health, written by Sir Howard. What was his name?
Sir Albert Howard.
Sir Albert Howard. And I think that was published in 1938. And he said, we've figured out this composting. Life is going to be good. We've solved all these problems. Great. Then World War II came along. And then after World War II, we had to dump all our ammunition. And the best place to dump it was on fields.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the beginning of the chemical green revolution.
Mm-hmm.
All propaganda, all nonsense, and all extremely destructive.
Mm-hmm.
We've been at war with our nation and voluntarily killed America since 1945.
Right.
And I mean, it truly is horrific. The data shows that 1 kilogram of urea fertilizer, by the way, we use millions of tons in the Corn Belt.
Right.
1 kg of urea fertilizer, and it's a salt.
Mm-hmm. It's a salt.
Kills 22 kilograms of soil life.
My goodness.
And we do that annually. Now, the other thing to remember about that soil life, so when you see, oh, the crops are doing really well because of urea, no, they're not. They're doing really well because of the dead soil life. Urea fertilizer isn't a fertilizer, it's a salt and a poison that releases the life in the soil. That is why, if you look at the amounts of urea fertilizer farmers have needed year in and year out, since the 1950s per acre, they just keep going up and up and up and up, and they're going vertical. The reason they're going vertical is there's less and less life in the soil for the fertilizer to kill. Now it's got even worse. Now they've got slow release urea fertilizer, where they literally are putting a little microplastic bag, around every grain of fertilizer and putting it into the soil. So now not only are we poisoning the soil, but now we're dumping plastics and microplastics across millions of acres of land.
So
I just don't understand.
We put we give plants nitrogen through a chemical fertilizer, when if you have a living soil ecosystem, they could be getting their nitrogen from living things. They could be getting, through processes that I don't pretend to understand, but I do know, I've heard from John Kemp and others, that it's a more efficient process. It's like 4 times more efficient for a plant to get its nitrogen from amino acids than from the chemical form of nitrogen.
Just ask yourself this: how old is the planet?
Oh, billions of 4.5 billion.
What is the age of the oldest land plant?
Like 400 million or something like that.
Worked for 400 million years, but in the last 70 years now we need urea to get plants to grow.
Oh yeah.
Absolute propaganda hogwash.
Right.
No sane, rational mind can accept it. And yet we've got hundreds of thousands of academics who don't only accept it, they preach it.
It's hard to get a man to understand something when his salary depends on not understanding it.
Yeah, I fully identify with Spock in the Star Trek thing, but that's illogical.
Not logical.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, next question. Do plants have a role in making the soil healthier? So we're taught that if you want your plants to grow well, you have to add to the soil, as if the plants are somehow a burden on the soil. But do plants have a role in making the soil healthier?
Okay, so here again, we come back to the fact that soil is a living organism. As soon as we stop thinking of soil as chemicals, we've answered your question. So if you're in the 1950s paradigm of soil as a chemical, then we need to add chemicals to make your soil healthy. No, wrong, illogical. A healthy soil is living organisms.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you assist living organisms? Well, what do all living organisms need? They need oxygen. They need moisture. And they need nutrients. And they need energy. Okay, so aerating, oxygen, that's your earthworms digging their tunnels. Moisture, yeah, there's got to be some, but there's the micro water cycle.
Mm-hmm.
So that is completely outside of rain. You know, that's fungi bringing moisture up from deep underground and trading it for sugars with the plants. You know, that's the dew, that's the transpiration and the condensation on plants overnight. So water, what was the next one?
Water, oxygen,
Nutrients.
nutrients, including
Okay.
nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, boron, molybdenum, selenium.
Yeah. So we've got data that shows that soils that were tested chemically that were shown to be completely nutrient deficient. When we've got crop fields healthy, the plants themselves were tested and found to have absolutely no nutrient deficiencies.
Mm-hmm.
The reason for that,
plants, not the soil. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, it's not the plants, it's the fungi.
Okay.
When you've got a healthy mycelial network, the fungi make the nutrients available in a plant's soluble form. And then energy. Well, what's the source of the energy? It's the sunlight, it's photosynthesis, it's C3 and C4 sugars being pushed down into the roots to be traded for these minerals with the fungi. Now, there was a French scientist, what was his name? It was a French scientist who did a study, and he didn't draw a conclusion because it was too mind-blowing, but he literally showed that animals can turn one element into another. Now, because he didn't understand it, he just wrote his book. He said, this is my research. This is the studies I did. Here's the data. Here's the results. He said, I'm not even going to try and draw a conclusion. But what it showed us was that our understanding of our planet and the transfer of animal, because I took it to nuclear scientists and they said, oh, that's absolutely impossible. It would require this much energy, to make that change, and they were doing it from their nuclear science point of view. And yet the researcher did the research over and over and over again, multiple different ways, always came up with the same results. The fact that the farmers in North Dakota had all the elements in the corn from nutrient deficient soils. All of these things tell us that we absolutely know nothing about this complexity. So the bottom line is, you want a healthy soil, make decisions to encourage life, make decisions to encourage photosynthesis, do not disturb the soil surface, and get your plow out of it, get your shovel out of it, get your garden fork out of it, get all of those things out, and try and think what the planet looked like when the dinosaurs were here before humans had started messing things up, because that is a healthy soil and that's what we need to be aiming for.
So you mentioned fungi, and fungi kind of have a role of delivering nutrients to plants. What role do fungi play in healthy soil, and what is the process for engaging fungi in the soil ecosystem?
Well,
is that a dumb question?
Well, basically, it's not a dumb question because a lot of people won't know. But when I was in school, we had the plant kingdom and the animal kingdom. And we didn't even know the fungi kingdom existed. Well, there's been more and more of a push to recognize that fungi are their own kingdom. The other thing that is very interesting is most plants have fungi and animals in them. Most animals have fungi and plants in them. And most fungi have plants and animals in them. So we are extremely complex living beings, living wholes. I like using humans in this example. We have more bacteria cells in the human body than we have human cells.
Mm-hmm.
If you look closely on me, you can see these red marks and stuff here on my face. That is fungi.
Mm.
This is fungi growing on my face.
Mm-hmm.
It's been there for 15, 20 years. It's quite a happy colony. I personally don't enjoy this happy colony living on my face, but that's where they live. That's their habitat, and they're not going away.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't matter what drugs we throw at that. It's like, nope, we live here. This is our territory. So, really, so when we look at fungi in the soil, fungi need warm, wet, dark areas to propagate and have their mycelial networks. The mycelial networks connect the planet in ways we cannot even begin to understand. They've got an electrical network. They're communicating. They're passing messages between plants. I mean, it's amazing. When we torture a plant on one end of a paddock, the fungi within minutes have told plants on the other end of the paddock, hey, you're about to get whacked with a chainsaw. And we can see the electronic impulses. We can see how they're communicating. So the fungi are, in modern terminology, they're the internet of the planet. And they are communicating between the plants and other fungi and at a rapid rate of knots. They've had fungi were used to redesign the entire Tokyo underground subway station because fungi have intelligence. And when I was a kid, we were blissfully, we didn't even know the fungi kingdom had, existed. Now we're saying fungi have intelligence. I mean, so our knowledge base is so limited and so kindergarten and preschool and archaic. It's not even funny. So we think we're these incredibly clever mortal humans, but we actually are just scratching at the tip of the complexity of nature. So you cannot have a soil without fungi. And when we've done our restoration and our biological carpet and we've got deserts to grow again, always the first thing we see, visually see, is we see the fungi flower or the fruit heads come up, which is what you know as a mushroom. We see the mushrooms come up and then we see plants germinate and start growing. Fungi are always step one in establishing a living soil. And they are kind of the communication system and building block, chemical chelators. They are the magic of the planet. They are the unseen and understood things that cement us all together. Literally, because of how linearly we think, the automatic thing is to say fungi are the most important things on the planet, but that would be more linear thinking. Right. The truth is they're not the most important, but they really do hold everything together in the whole.
Mm-hmm. So that reminds me of the biological carpet, which is what you call the layer of manure when you have cattle grazing. And so what is the biological carpet and what role do cows play in creating the biological carpet?
Well, the role the cows play is they produce it. That's a fancy way for saying cow dung hits the ground, the chickens spread it out, it's interlocked together. But so the cows are what are needed to produce it. Now that rumen is full of bacteria and fungi spores. I think I read somewhere that every time you take a breath, you breathe in 11 fungus spores. So so fungi spores are everywhere in the air. But so when the carpet is put down, the fungi spores are there, because it's that inch thick layer and it prevents the ultraviolet light getting to the sand surface, it gives a happy, safe medium for the fungi to begin, the spores to begin germinating, and then the mycelial network to grow. And when we peel up the biological carpet, we are looking for that fine white mist of tiny hairs of mycelium to show us that that process has started. The mycelium then find any seeds in the sand or in the carpet itself, and if you look at it with an electron microscope, they actually tap into the hull of the seed, and what they're doing is they're then communicating with that seed, and they're saying, hey buddy, it's safe, or hey buddy, it's not safe to germinate now. So the seed needs the mycelium to turn it on or off.
Fascinating. It almost makes it seem like the seed and the fungi are sentient and intelligent.
Not almost, they are
They are.
sentient and intelligent. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, you'd better stop eating your vegetables. Those poor creatures, they suffer so much.
I know. That's a whole other conversation. What else would you like for us to know about how to manage healthy soil?
Gabe Brown came up with a catchy phrase, the soil armor and the 5 principles, keeping the ground covered. That was based on our earlier work, but he just came up with a catchy way of saying it. But the principles are basically ultraviolet light is the enemy of soil. That's bottom line. So in a non-brittle environment, ultraviolet light really struggles to get down to the forest surface because there's the canopy layer and all the different layers breaking the ultraviolet light. So by the time you get down to the jungle surface, it's dark down there. And I don't know if you've ever been in a big jungle, but it is actually scarily dark down there. I mean, we feel, we don't feel good walking around on the ground. We naturally want to be up in the trees. So out of the non-brittle environments, then we come into the brittle environments, and ultraviolet light has a much easier chance of getting to the soil surface, and ultraviolet light sterilizes and kills soil microorganisms. Ultraviolet light, more than anything, is the enemy of soils. Ultraviolet light is what we have to prevent getting down to ground level. So in nature, in the grasslands and brittle environments, grasslands, traditionally we're about 30% grasses, about 30%, I'm talking 30, 35, somewhere in there. We're about 30% grasses, 30% legumes, and about 30% broadleafs and taprooted plants. Now, when we look at the grasses, we today manage for grasslands. Grasslands are the last things we need. Grass is an almost unimportant forage for our brittle environments. What the grasses were important for and unrecognized for was grass has a high lignin content. And so a grazing ruminant needs about 5% grass in its diet daily for the lignin to move the other plant materials through the rumen, through the 4 intestines, and to move it through. The lignin is kind of like the wire mesh to move the product through the animal. And then when the lignin is lying on the soil surface, it does not decompose rapidly in harsh ultraviolet light. So what happens is lignin becomes the armor to protect the soil surface from ultraviolet light. So grasses are needed for the armor. And that's basically it, except for the 5% to move the product through the rumen. And then the proteins, generally, the highest source of proteins in a brittle environment are legumes. So the legumes are needed by the grazing animal for for the microorganisms in the intestine to get protein. And then the broadleafs, those, those are the major source of your carbohydrates. So currently we try and get carbohydrate and protein and lignin all out of grass because we don't understand. We need to get rid of that paradigm and have a little bit of grass for soil protection and for lignin, but the majority of our pastures need to be legumes and broadleafs. And I'm talking not one legume and one broadleaf. I'm talking a grassland in Africa that was analyzed. The botanist stopped counting legumes at 1,000. Now he stopped at 1,000 because when he came to do his research, he only brought 1,000 plant presses with him. And so he got up to 1,000. He was like, okay, my research is over. I don't have any more plant presses. And that was just in one grassland. So we thought of it as grassland. It had 140 species of grass and over 1,000 legumes. And then broadleafs. I mean, broadleafs, just go and look in your vegetable garden. Go and look at all your broadleafs around the plant, the world. There's 10, 20, 30,000 different broadleafs. So those are the carbohydrates. The legumes are the proteins, and the grasses are the lignans. That is what we need to be seeing in our brittle environments. Very different.
We need that diversity, not just grass, but we need a diversity.
Absolute diversity. So we've just spent the last 10,000 years trying to get rid of biodiversity, trying to get rid of diversity, trying to simplify everything. The Native Americans, they simplified things to 3 things. They had corn, the grass, they had beans, the legume, and they had pumpkins, the broadleaf. Have you seen a pumpkin leaf?
All right.
So those humans simplified the biodiversity of America to 3. We came along and we simplified all the way down to 1. Corn. Yeah. Now, the Native Americans were wrong with their biodiversity of 3. We're highly wrong with no biodiversity. All humans have done this for thousands and thousands of years. We need to get back to the biodiversity. We need to get back to the mammoths in America and the giant things but all of those huge grazing animals can only have existed with an absolute smorgasbord of plants upon which to feed. All those plants were pumping sugars into the soil to keep the soil healthy, fit, and rich. And that is why you found where White Sands Missile Range is today in the New Mexico desert, why there used to be mammoths and swamps there. The rainfall is still there. I mean, only 38,000 years ago, they were killing mammoths there. And that's not the last ones to die. That's the ones we found. When did the last mammoths die? Were they 10,000 years ago? Were they 5,000 years ago? We don't know. But we do know that humans killed them because it was a factory processing plant below the cliffs, and they found the spears. They found all the flint tools. So humans are all humans. Do not think of the noble savage. Do not think of anything like this. This is humans. This is blacks, whites, Eskimos, Native Americans, Indians, Aboriginals. This is all humans. We all try and simplify nature down to one thing, and it has disastrous consequences every time.
Right. So, Roger, it's been a great conversation. How can people stay in touch with you and follow up?
Hart, we have a website, fixdeserts.com, and we have a subscribe page on that. I would ask everyone to subscribe. Then you'll get access to our newsletter and our team who can keep you informed. And then we also have a Facebook presence, a Instagram presence, and a Twitter presence, all with the same name, Fixed Deserts. But but our main website is fixeddeserts.com, and you can spell it in the singular or the plural, and you'll get us. And please subscribe to our page so we can keep in contact with you.
Sounds great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Art.